you have worked with various brands and organizations where storytelling has played a really key role in their communication strategy. So is there a secret sauce there? Like how do you craft those really compelling narratives that engage both employees but also customers too?
100%. There's a quote that I live by, which is people are emotional beings who are sometimes rational. We all connect through story. And that's why so much history is passed down from the early days of, humans around the fireplace, the fire telling the stories of the ancestors and all the insights and lessons learned. So I think story is everything. Your strategy is a story. You're interviewing a new candidate. I was interviewing someone last night to join our company, and we were telling the story of our company and the story of what's coming next, which touches people's hearts. I think for the most part, you have to make some sense rationally, but it is all about touching people's hearts and then energizing them and onboarding them and mobilizing them towards something that you can all achieve together. So I'm a massive fan of story. We also, in another example, I think Friday, it was announced that this organization called Beauty Matter awarded one of our brands, Jason Wu Beauty, the award for, I think it was best use of technology or something. But essentially in February at New York Fashion Week, we were invited with our other brand, Kimchi Chic Beauty, to be the TikTok Shop Beauty launch partner last year. And that has transformed the brand. Social selling is fascinating. I think obsessed is not an overstatement of how interested I am in seeing how it's all going to play out. And we said, okay, we've learned from Kimchi Chic Beauty, how can we use this for Jason Wu in a way that would make sense for Jason? And we said, what if we were behind the scenes at the runway and we gave anyone, anywhere in the world, a view into what it is to see the models getting their finishing touch. Diane Kendall, this amazing makeup artist, giving the looks and then saying, you can get the look even before it goes on the runway in one click, super affordable.
Cool.
And we bundled these looks. And so we were the first brand to ever go live on TikTok Shop at New York Fashion Week, where you could actually buy the looks
Wow.
even before they hit the runway. And to me, it was neat to do it. And I'm so glad that we could live in the kind of real expression of what is unique about that brand. But telling the story that I had just shared, that's, I think, the reason why the brand was then awarded and received an accolade for it, because you can then put yourself there. Yeah, what do those models look like? Are they all just running around getting their clothes? Like, how does this even work? You're behind the scenes, and then Jason is there kind of finishing all the touches, and the makeup goes on, and there's so much story embedded within that whole moment, and getting to be there personally was also like a little kid going, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm inside of Vogue magazine.
Oh, I bet.
And sitting on the runway. They were very generous. I was sitting in the front row on the runway, and you see, Olivia Colpo, and you see all these like big influencers and famous people and paparazzi, and you're just sitting there in the dark waiting for the models. I mean, I felt like I was inside a storybook, which was incredible. But without story, just delivering, on point 3 in my PowerPoint, we must save $1 billion of cost. Like, it doesn't really touch people or motivate people. But talking about how you're going to use that cost savings to invest in your brands because the consumer is changing. We're going to make interesting additions to the portfolio, and all of that brings you along and hopefully light people up.
Yeah. Very cool. And I absolutely would have been with you there on that front row, like, oh my gosh, I'm in The Devil Wears Prada or something.
I was.
How have I ended
Heart
up?
was like beating out of my chest.
I bet.
There was a woman sitting next to me named Vivian who came from the Nordics, and she is a cashmere designer, and they had done a collab. And I think it was her first time she ever saw her designs. And she stayed up the entire night finishing these sweaters. And it was the first time she ever saw her creations on the runway like this at Fashion Week. She was crying as the models came down the runway. And I was like, I couldn't have been more grateful to be this tiny, tiny, tiny part of it. And the raw humanity of the whole thing was incredible.
Yeah. Amazing. It sounds it. Well, I mean, you've just told me an incredible story there. So I'm fully on board with those storytelling skills. But I know that I think both of us with the kind of communications background, maybe storytelling comes a little more naturally to some people than others. I once read an article, I think it was Brilliant Ink actually, where they talked about for people that struggle to get into that storytelling mindset, that you just start your sentence with once upon a time and it hopefully gets you into that mindset. But have you got any kind of top tips or kind of tangible things that leaders who may not be so strong in the storytelling area, anything that they can do to kind of help inspire that story about those financial figures or whatever it is?
There's a leader who was the CFO at Home Depot when I was there, and now she's the CEO of UPS, the parcel company. Her name's Carol Tomé. And she talked about a time earlier in her career. She was a young CFO and over, I think, 25 years with Home Depot before she became the CEO of UPS. And she told a story about how at one of her first investor conferences, she was, bullet 3, we will deliver this gross margin, na, na, na. And an investor actually fell asleep in front of her.
Oh, oh no.
He said,
Oh gosh.
never again. I'm going to commit myself
Yeah.
all of these messages through compelling stories that people will connect with and be interested in. And she put in the really hard work of getting a coach, practicing, repetition, pushing herself into the discomfort. And now she's known as probably the most compelling storyteller. If you hear someone like Jim Cramer talk about her from CNBC or others, she is absolutely astonishingly talented. And you would look at her on stage and say, oh, she was just born with it. But it's not true. It's not true. She worked on it really hard. So I think to me, you have to set an intention and it has to be genuine that you're going to commit yourself. It's like getting into shape at the gym or eating vegan or whatever, your aspiration is, learn how to knit, whatever your thing is, and then committing yourself to trying and practicing over and over and over and over until you're good at it. The way that I came into it was a little bit different in the sense that I was a theatrical little kid. And so I grew up in the theater and loving the arts and loving music and performing. So I was just on the stage since I was 5 years old because I liked delivering story. And I loved the moment when you could look into the audience and you were telling the story like I was in Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods. I was Little Red Riding Hood at one point. And I remember playing my role and seeing the faces and seeing the animations and seeing the nervousness when the wolf comes out and taking people through story was so joyful to me. And so that's how I practiced it. But I definitely had stage fright. Yes, I definitely forgot my lines. Yes, I definitely had wardrobe malfunction. Yes, you go through all of those things to get to the place where you lived kind of more natively in that space.
Yeah, for sure. And I really agree with you there. It's that like practice makes perfect, right? Like you can't just say, okay, well, need to tell this story coming up. I'll figure it out the day before. And then a year later, when you've got another story that you need to tell at another presentation, it's about making sure that you're kind of training that muscle, right? And getting into that place.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Hey, if you're getting value from today's conversation, make sure you subscribe right now so you don't miss any future episodes of the Aspire to Inspire podcast.